On a chilly Monday morning, Jerome Wilson, 47 years old, CEO of a renowned hotel empire, walked into the hotel he had built from scratch. This wasn't the first time Jerome had set foot in his hotel. But today, he wasn't coming as the owner, but as a regular customer, wanting to check the quality of the service he had created. Unlike the luxurious appearance of the hotel, Jerome came today without a fancy suit, no limo, and no entourage, just a man walking in to check in for the night. But what he didn't expect was the disrespect he would face at the very place he had put so much effort into building. Jerome had received numerous complaints from guests about poor service, unkempt rooms, and, notably, clear discrimination that guests had to endure when visiting the hotel. Instead of solving the problem the usual way, by calling the manager or scheduling an internal audit, Jerome decided to visit the hotel unannounced. He wanted to witness firsthand the service his customers were experiencing, and he didn't want anyone to recognize him as the hotel owner to experience the service truly and honestly. From the moment he reached the front desk, Jerome could feel the indifference and disrespect from the staff. A young receptionist, Kim, didn't even look up when he approached. Her body language screamed disdain, her phone in hand, eyes glued to the screen, and an attitude as though she didn't care that a customer was standing right in front of her. Jerome stayed silent, but deep inside, he was ready to face a much bigger challenge than he anticipated. Jerome stood there at the front desk, feeling the complete indifference from Kim, the young receptionist, who, right from the first glance, showed no respect for him. He had done everything properly, providing his reservation details, but Kim hardly cared, keeping her head down and scrolling through her phone, never once looking up at him. A long, silent moment passed, and Jerome knew this wasn't just a simple system error. His feeling was correct. It was discrimination, an intentional act of neglect. When he gently spoke up, "I have a reservation," Kim simply shrugged, still not looking up from her phone. Her indifferent reply was, I don't see it." Once again, Jerome kept calm, feeling clearly that Kim had already judged him wrongly. There was no friendly inquiry or concern, just the apathy she had shown to any customer she deemed unworthy. Jerome patiently asked her to check again. Kim didn't respond, merely repeating her lazy actions, scrolling through the computer screen in a disinterested manner. Her reply was no different from before, "I still don't see anything." Sorry, but her tone wasn't apologetic at all. It was filled with complete indifference. Jerome realized that this wasn't a system error. It was a deliberate decision. She had seen him and decided he wasn't worth her time or respect. At that moment, Jerome realized that discrimination didn't just happen in society. Sometimes, it took place in places that were supposed to be models of professionalism, where everyone should be treated with respect regardless of race or status. But today, he wasn't going to let it slide. Things were going to be different. After several requests for verification and receiving more indifferent responses from Kim, Jerome Wilson felt a forceful urge. He couldn't let this discrimination continue. Despite Kim's apathy and disdain, Jerome remained composed. He pulled out his phone, opened the reservation confirmation email, and showed it to Kim. "I have the reservation right here," he said, his voice calm yet sharp. Kim glanced at the screen briefly and quickly returned to her phone, showing no real concern for the proof Jerome had just provided. "Yeah, the system doesn't lie," Kim replied, but her answer wasn't convincing. Jerome realized that the issue wasn't the system or a booking mistake, but Kim's judgment. She had looked at him and decided he wasn't deserving of proper service. At this point, Jerome knew that this wasn't a simple error. It was a serious issue of blatant discrimination. He decided not to let Kim continue with this behavior. With unwavering resolve, he pulled out his second phone, the one with full access to the hotel's internal system. After a few seconds of navigating, he discovered that Kim had deleted his reservation manually. Jerome couldn't believe what he was seeing. This was a deliberate act, a serious violation of the company's and his customers' rights. He took a deep breath, trying to calm the anger rising within him. Looking at Kim's name tag, he said, "Interesting." Kim, now I understand everything. He wasn't just aiming to fix this for himself but to change the entire hotel system, ensuring no guest would have to endure the same discrimination he had faced. Jerome felt the tension in the air as Kim began to realize she was facing a major issue. Although she tried to maintain her calm composure, her face clearly showed her fear. While Jerome remained still, patiently waiting, he looked at her directly, without hiding his disappointment. With a half smile, Jerome asked, "Kim, so how do I explain the deletion of my reservation?" She stammered, her mouth opening and closing without any words coming out. For the first time in their conversation, Kim was genuinely speechless. A brief flash of fear appeared in her eyes, something that hadn't been there before. Jerome didn't allow her to try to make excuses. "Don't even bother, Kim," he continued, his voice calm but firm. "You deleted my reservation, and now I want to know why." Jerome's question was like a slap in the face for Kim. Everything was now clear. Her actions were not a simple mistake, but a deliberate act of discrimination, carried out with contempt. Kim could no longer deny what had happened, and she had no choice but to remain silent. But Jerome didn't stop there. He knew that this wasn't just about addressing a personal issue, it was an opportunity to change an entire system. He couldn't allow Kim to stay at the hotel any longer, so he decided to take the next step, to ensure justice was served. "Kim, this isn't over," Jerome asserted, his eyes full of determination. "You will face the consequences of your actions." And so, fighting for fairness became not only Jerome's mission but also the starting point for a larger transformation within his hotel system. When Kim stood there, unable to justify or deny her actions, Jerome felt a powerful surge of resolve. He wasn't just the CEO of a hotel, he was the person responsible for protecting fairness and defending the customers he had committed to serve. Today, not just one individual would face the consequences, but the entire system would be forced to change. Jerome was no longer patient. He turned back to Kim one last time. And this time, there was no trace of tolerance in his gaze, only the certainty of someone who had decided to take decisive action. "Kim, I have enough evidence about you. You didn't just delete my reservation. You've had a history of refusing service to customers, especially those who don't fit the standard you deem worthy. Today will be the day you face the consequences." Jerome's voice was firm and cold, without any hint of regret. He looked Kim straight in the eye, not allowing her the chance to waste his time with meaningless excuses. He decided to act immediately. "You haven't just ruined one customer's service, you've violated a basic principle in my company. You are being fired immediately." Kim, unable to pretend anymore, lowered her head, her face pale with fear. Jerome didn't give her a chance to speak further. He turned to the hotel manager, Stephen Turner, to make the right decision and fire Kim immediately. While it was a bold and somewhat harsh action, Jerome understood that this wasn't a personal punishment. This was about protecting a system of fairness, ensuring that those working in his company treated every customer with respect, regardless of race or background. But Jerome's actions didn't stop at firing Kim. He knew that real change would only happen when the entire system was reformed. Jerome wasn't just aiming to end discriminatory behavior, he wanted to overhaul the entire process to ensure every customer felt respected, no matter who they were. After firing Kim, Jerome didn't stop there. He knew the issue went beyond one person, it was a systemic problem. Jerome entered the office of Stephen Turner, the hotel manager, with a resolve that couldn't be shaken. His eyes were cold, but filled with power. He realized something. Stephen, as the head of the hotel, had been too weak to address the issues that had arisen and had allowed employees like Kim to continue negatively affecting the hotel. "Stephen," Jerome began, his voice blunt and uncompromising. "We need to talk." Stephen, pale, hurriedly looked up. "Oh, Mr. Wilson, I didn't expect this. I thought I handled everything well." "Handled well?" Jerome cut him off, his gaze unflinching. "You've received multiple complaints from customers about Kim over the past months. And you did nothing. You've let her ruin the hotel. And now I have to deal with it myself. You will no longer be in charge here." Stephen's face turned ashen, but he still tried to explain himself. But I just thought she needed more time. More training. Time? Jerome scoffed, unable to believe what he was hearing. Kim is not a new employee. She's been here long enough. And these issues aren't simple misunderstandings. This is clear discrimination, and you've let it go on for far too long. Looking at Stephen's shell-shocked face, Jerome couldn't help but feel some sympathy for a man who lacked the strength to make a change. But he also understood that allowing weak people like Stephen to stay would only harm the system. With his final decision, Jerome ordered Stephen to step down from his position. He instructed Stephen to fire Kim immediately and overhaul the management structure of the hotel, implementing retraining programs for all staff on how to treat customers with fairness and respect. Now, Stephen, Jerome said, your job here is finished. As for me, I will do whatever it takes to ensure this hotel no longer has these issues. Starting today, we rebuild from the ground up. And so, Jerome didn't just fire one employee, he changed the entire hotel system to protect fairness and equality for all guests. After firing Stephen Turner, Jerome Wilson stood in his hotel, once a point of pride, now the center of a revolution. He saw the tension on the faces of the remaining staff, who were waiting to see what his next decision would be. But Jerome wasn't afraid. He knew that what he was doing today wasn't just about addressing a personal issue. It was a long-term strategy to reform the entire hotel system. This was his moment to stand up, not just for himself, but for all the customers who had been discriminated against, treated unfairly. Jerome took a deep breath, adjusted his suit, and turned toward the front desk. He looked at the remaining staff, who were eyeing him with nervous curiosity. Listen up, he began, his voice booming across the room. From today, everything will change. We won't just serve our customers. We'll treat them like human beings. No discrimination, no hierarchy, and no more indifference like this. He continued, I'm ordering a comprehensive review of all the complaints we've received, all the feedback from customers. Every employee will undergo training on fairness, respect, and professionalism. If anyone can't do that, they'll have no place here. Meanwhile, Kim, who had been fired, walked out of the hotel with a glare of anger and defeat. But for Jerome, this wasn't just about firing an employee. It was about building a fair system, about eliminating discrimination, and protecting the rights of every customer. Jerome's next steps weren't about vengeance but changing and protecting the values he had worked so hard to establish. He was determined not only to restore his hotel, but to set an example for all other businesses, that fairness and respect would never be overlooked, no matter the circumstances. Thus, once again, Jerome Wilson not only protected justice but also reaffirmed his authority in business and building a fairer society, where everyone deserves to be treated with absolute respect and equality.